another great week of Sunday school. I know, we are simply unfrog-gettable.
Oh man, your jokes make me want to croak. Ribbit!
I totally agree.
But on a serious note, did you know an acronym for FROG is Fully Rely on God? FROG. Fully rely on God. FROG.
I hope that's unfrog-gettable.
Today we are going to learn about 10 plagues that God sent to wake Pharaoh up.
His eyes were opened, and Pharaoh learned that God is in charge.
And what we should learn from this is to frog. Fully rely on God.
Let's give our full attention to Dana as he introduces us to today's lesson.
Before we get started today with our lesson, I want to ask you a few questions. Have you ever been told to do something by your parents or teachers, and you chose not to do it? What happened? When we ignore our parents or teachers, that's called disobedience, and that's not a good thing. In today's lesson, we are going to learn about Moses' life. We are going to continue to learn about Moses. Does anyone remember what God told Moses to do during our last lesson? That's right. God told Moses to go back to Egypt. He told him to go back to Egypt and tell Pharaoh to let God's people go. Pharaoh didn't want to listen to God, and his disobedience is what got him into a lot of trouble. We're going to talk more about that today, but before we do, I'm going to ask you to stand and sing and praise our amazing God.
Oh, I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Oh, I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I
Good job! I think God loves hearing all your voices praising Him. Now let's say our big idea together. Some people have to learn the hard way that God is in control. Let's say that one more time. Some people have to learn the hard way that God is in control.
Hey kids, have you ever had anyone tell you to do something, but then a little voice inside of your head told you to do something else? Like maybe your parents asked you to do the dishes, but the little voice in your head told you to go play video games instead? Or your teacher told you to stop talking, but the voice in your head told you to talk even more?
Well, in today's lesson, we're going to see how Pharaoh was told to do something, but he listened to that little voice in his head. Moses went to Egypt with a simple message for Pharaoh.
At the end of our last lesson, God told Moses to go back to Egypt.
Moses had to tell Pharaoh to let his people go. They weren't going to be slaves anymore. Memory verse.
I am the Lord. I will free you from your oppression and will rescue you from your slavery in Egypt. Moses was nervous and didn't think he could do it, but God knew that he could. So Moses went and talked to Pharaoh.
Pharaoh didn't listen, and he told Moses to go take a hike. Moses did exactly what God told him. He went to Pharaoh and told him he needed to let the people go, or God would punish the Egyptians.
Pharaoh refused and told Moses to get out of Egypt. He wasn't going to let the Israelites go, and he wasn't going to let Moses scare him.
That was a really bad decision on Pharaoh's part, because what happened next was really bad.
God unleashed 10 plagues to prove his power. Moses told Pharaoh that God was punishing him if he didn't let the Israelites go.
And God did just that. He sent 10 different plagues to Egypt.
There was a bunch of flies, a huge hailstorm, Everyone got blisters and 3 days of darkness, just to name a few. But the worst of all was all the firstborn babies dying. The plagues were terrible for Pharaoh, but God had to show him who was boss.
After the 10th plague, Pharaoh was finally ready to let the people go. Some people have to learn the hard way that God is in control.
Think about how much easier things would have been if Pharaoh had just listened to God in the first place.
Kids, sometimes we can be just like Pharaoh. We know what's right, but we still don't do it.
So does that mean that God will send us plagues? Probably not.
But he might let us reap some bad consequences.
And we'll end up learning the lesson the hard way, just like Pharaoh did.
So next time your parents ask you to do dishes, don't listen to that little voice in your head.
Do what they ask so you don't have to learn how to obey the hard way.
We want to know what you learned from today's lesson, so it's time to review. The first question is, who did Moses talk to in Egypt? You're right, he talked to Pharaoh. Now, how many plagues did God send to Egypt? You're right, he sent 10 plagues. True or false? Sometimes people have to learn the hard way for God to be in control. The answer is true. Pharaoh had many opportunities to listen to what Moses was telling him to do. He could have saved himself and his people from a lot of trouble if he would have just done what he was told. But he chose not to, and because of it, him and his people had to suffer many terrible consequences. God sent 10 plagues to Egypt. Do any of you guys remember any of those plagues? You're right, some were frogs, locusts, flies. He turned a river into blood. And there were many other terrible things. God did this to show Pharaoh that he was in charge and that he needed to listen. Pharaoh kept on disobeying God, so God kept on sending more and more consequences. Eventually, Pharaoh learned his lesson and he freed the people. But it took a long time. It took a long time for Pharaoh to do this. Moses learned an important lesson too. He learned that God will always get his way even when we are disobedient.
That reminds me of our memory verse. Let's all stand and say it together. I am the Lord. I will free you from your oppression and will rescue you from your slavery in Egypt. Exodus 6:6. Let's say that one more time. I am the Lord. I will free you from your oppression and rescue you from your slavery in Egypt. Exodus 6:6.
God told Moses and the Israelites that he was going to free them from slavery, and he stuck to his word. He did whatever it took to make Pharaoh see that he was in charge. Sometimes we can be a bit like Pharaoh. We're told to do something and we don't listen because we think we know better. But we don't. Let's not be like Pharaoh and have to learn the hard way. We should always obey what God is telling us to do. This includes listening to our parents and our teachers. God put them in our lives to help us. So don't disobey, or you'll have to learn the lesson the hard way. Remember, God is always in control. Now let's stand, let's sing, and let's praise our amazing God.
You spoke a word and brought the world to light. Your voice still echoes through the darkest night. I could try my best to count the stars. Nothing could compare to who you are.
And remember, when God is in control, sometimes we have to be his hands.